Hi, Dylan Morrison here. Thanks for joining me today for another little chat about the spiritual life. Today I want to chat about what I call Cactus Christians. I'm sure you've met one, or perhaps more, during your walk along the spiritual path. Cactus Christians are very prickly individuals. I know this because I was one myself in my early days as a somewhat Jesus freak. Cactus Christians like to think of themselves as very soft and kind folk, but in fact all that they present to their outer world and to anybody lucky or unlucky enough to bump into them is a very prickly, hard surface, one that easily wounds another approaching human being. Now, as you know, I surf the net quite a bit and chatting to people and taking part in various groups within the social media world. And usually about once a week, a prickly Christian will appear, sometimes out of nowhere, to confront me or attack me. Basically, I get the feeling that I'm not wanted in a particular group that they may happen to be a member of. And in plain man's English, they're basically saying, Dylan, please clear off, because everything in here is cozy. I have a position of influence and authority in here, and I would prefer if you take your fresh and new ideas and go somewhere else. I usually agree and immediately leave the group and go somewhere else, where folk have a much more open and welcoming attitude to anybody who comes contributing ideas. Now, the thing about Cactus Christians are they are obsessed with space, psychological and religious space. They feel quite happy to stay within a particular room of Christianity and do their thing there. But as soon as someone knocks at the door and comes in to their room who maybe wants to share some ideas about rearranging the furniture or welcoming them into another room, the door is quickly shut in our face. This usually takes the form of sarcasm. For a Christian to blatantly dismiss somebody is not the dumb thing, it's not the loving thing, so the weapon of choice is usually a thorn of sarcasm or dry wit. But unfortunately it doesn't take long for you to encounter these folk before you realise that that's actually a violence lurking underneath their skin and that they're actually attacking you and telling you to go away. Now, how does a Jesus or Yeshua follower get into such a defensive mode and into such a state? Let me suggest a few things that might help us in dealing and understanding with these folk. I believe that when people are converted into Christianity or decide to follow Jesus, they usually have a genuine experience of divine love and indeed of a contrition of sorts where they let their past life go and plug into the new world of freedom and love. But unfortunately, it doesn't take long being within a particular stream of Christianity for that trust in divine love to become a trust and quite an obsessive adherence to an ideology. Now, this ideology could be a Catholic ideology, could be an Orthodox ideology, a Baptist one, a Methodist one, a Pentecostal one, a Charismatic one, an emerging church one, an organic church one. It can be any ideology out there in the Christian marketplace. So what happens after a while is that the person begins to feel that they have to defend their ideology, the one that is their spiritual or religious home, rather than trusting and letting the divine love that they first encountered to flow into them and through them out to all folk who come across their path. This is where I see ego, or the wounded self, as really coming into its own. Let me say that ego loves ideology, especially religious, or indeed mind, body, spirit, spirituality ideology. Ego will take anything and use it to defend the wounded self from further attack. Now, when a person gets into such a state, they tend to be on a permanent war footing. Ego has them well drilled in the ways of warfare. And so when somebody breezes along and comes into their view who suggests a freedom and a release from ideology, well, then we got all the defensive measures that start to kick in big time. Now, these folks are not nice to be around. In fact, if you give me the choice, I'd rather be with folk that have no ideology than be with folk who have a strong religious ideology. With folk who don't cling to ideology, they tend to be very flexible in the way they deal with people. Whereas those who are into ideology big time, especially one attached to Jesus or church, well, they don't have time for people outside the ideology structure of their belief. In other words, I call this their little Linus blanket, their security blanket, the thing that they hold on to protect their inner self. So what can we do when we come along with these folk? Well, the simple answer is usually given as we just love them. Easier said than done, I think. Yet I would suggest that in loving Cactus Christians, the best thing to do is to pull back from them. Because the more we press into them, the more we upset them and trigger off this reaction of judgment and verbal violence. Can we do anything to help them? Well, it doesn't take long being a Christian before you realize that you actually can't help other Christians. We are all responsible for our own inner world. And we have to let God look after folk. In other words, what I'd suggest is we withdraw in a loving and kind way, but withdraw nevertheless. And somewhere down the road, the divine love will send along a transpersonal crisis, something that will really floor the ego of the Cactus Christian concerned. Now, their whole ideology will probably go down the toilet or down the tubes when this happens. But that's good news, because it's at this stage that divine love can get inside the prickly, pointed skin of the Cactus Christian and begin to work on their heart. And after this, it's possible that we can re-engage with our brother or sister, although we will always be careful of the prickly parts of those who claim to follow Jesus. Thank you for listening.